the survival instinct that locks you into financial struggle. You're not being irrational. You're not lazy. You're not making random bad decisions. Your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do, keep you alive. The problem is that the same instinct that helped your ancestors survive is now the very thing keeping you financially trapped. When you're stressed about money, when you're living paycheck to paycheck, when you're constantly worried about making ends meet, your brain shifts into a mode that prioritizes immediate survival over long-term prosperity. It's not a choice. It's automatic. And it completely changes how you think, decide, and behave with money. This is the scarcity mindset in its rawest form. And until you understand how it works and why it's sabotaging you, you'll keep making the same financial mistakes no matter how hard you try to do better. How your brain responds to financial stress. Your brain wasn't built for modern financial decisions. It was built to handle immediate physical threats, predators, food shortages, dangerous environments, things that required fast, decisive action to survive. When you're under financial stress, your brain interprets that stress the same way it would interpret a physical threat. It triggers your fight or flight response. It floods your system with stress hormones. It narrows your focus to the immediate problem in front of you and shuts down your ability to think long-term. This is why people in financial distress make decisions that look irrational from the outside. They're not being stupid. Their brains are literally operating in survival mode, optimized for short-term relief rather than long-term stability. You see a small amount of money come in, and you spend it immediately on something that feels urgent or emotionally comforting. You avoid looking at your bank account because the stress of seeing the number is too overwhelming. You take out a high-interest loan because you need cash now and can't think past next week. You skip saving or investing because your brain can't process future needs when current needs feel so pressing. All of these behaviors make perfect sense in survival mode. They're just destroying your financial future. The bandwidth problem. Financial stress doesn't just change your priorities. It actually reduces your cognitive capacity. Researchers have shown that worrying about money consumes mental bandwidth, the same way running multiple apps drains your phone's battery. When you're constantly stressed about bills, debt, and making it to the next paycheck, a significant portion of your mental energy is tied up in that worry. You have less bandwidth left for everything else. This makes you worse at problem solving, planning, self-control, and decision-making. It's not that you're incapable of making good financial decisions. It's that your brain is operating under such strain that even simple decisions become harder. You make mistakes you wouldn't normally make. You overlook solutions you would normally see. You act impulsively when you would normally be more thoughtful. And the cruel irony is that this happens most when you need your best thinking the most. The people who are under the most financial pressure are the ones whose brains are least equipped to make the decisions that would relieve that pressure. This creates a vicious cycle. Financial stress reduces your cognitive capacity. Reduced cognitive capacity leads to worse financial decisions. Worse financial decisions create more financial stress. And round it goes. Breaking this cycle doesn't start with willpower. It starts with reducing the stress enough to restore your mental bandwidth. Even a small financial buffer, a clear plan, or a reduction in immediate pressure can make a massive difference in your ability to think clearly and act strategically. The present bias trap survival mode makes you hyper-focused on the present. Your brain discounts the future heavily, because in survival situations there might not be a future. The only thing that matters is getting through today. This is why saving feels impossible when you're in financial stress. Your brain doesn't care about retirement, future emergencies, or long-term security. It cares about whether you can eat this week, keep the lights on, and avoid immediate disaster. Every decision gets filtered through this present-focused lens. Spending money on something that gives you immediate relief feels rational even if it's financially destructive. Delaying gratification feels pointless because the future is abstract and uncertain, while the present is painfully real. This is also why people in poverty often make purchases that seem irrational to people with financial security. A new phone when they can't pay rent, expensive shoes when they have debt, fast food when they could cook cheaper meals at home. But these decisions make sense when you understand survival mode. When your life is relentlessly stressful and deprived, small moments of pleasure or dignity become psychologically essential. They're not frivolous. They're what keep you functional. They're brief reprieves from constant survival anxiety. The problem is that these short-term coping mechanisms prevent long-term escape. They provide temporary relief at the cost of perpetual struggle, and your brain, locked in survival mode, can't see past that immediate relief. The risk aversion problem. When you're in survival mode, your tolerance for risk collapses. You can't afford to take chances because you're already on the edge. Any setback could be catastrophic. So you play it safe, even when playing it safe keeps you stuck. You stay in a job you hate because quitting feels too risky, even if the job is underpaying you and limiting your growth. You don't invest because losing money feels unbearable, even though not investing guarantees you'll fall behind inflation. You don't start a side business or learn a new skill because the time and energy investment feels like too much when you're barely surviving. This makes sense from a survival perspective. When you're on the edge, preserving what little you have feels more important than trying to gain more. But in the modern economy, this extreme risk aversion is a trap. It prevents the very moves that could improve your situation. Wealthy people can take calculated risks because they have cushion. They can afford to fail, learn, and try again. People in survival mode don't have that luxury, so they avoid risk entirely, and that keeps them trapped. This is one of the cruelest aspects of poverty and financial stress. It's not just that you have less money, it's that having less money forces you into behavioral patterns that make it harder to get more. The decision fatigue effect. Survival mode forces you to make constant, high-stakes decisions with limited resources. Should you pay the electric bill or buy groceries? Should you fix your car or pay rent? Should you take the overtime shift even though you're exhausted or risk falling further behind? Every day is a series of impossible trade-offs, and every decision drains your mental energy. This is called decision fatigue, and it's a major reason why people in financial stress struggle with self-control and long-term planning. By the time you've navigated a day's worth of financial crises and difficult choices, your brain is exhausted. You have no energy left for the kind of thoughtful, disciplined decisions that build financial stability. So you default to whatever is easiest, whatever provides immediate relief, whatever requires the least mental effort. This is why people who are exhausted from financial stress are more likely to overspend, eat unhealthy food, skip exercise, and make other choices that seem self-destructive. It's not a character flaw, it's mental exhaustion. Reducing decision fatigue requires simplifying your financial life as much as possible, automating savings, creating clear rules and systems so you don't have to make the same decisions repeatedly, eliminating unnecessary choices. Every bit of mental energy you can save is energy you can redirect toward better financial behavior. The learned helplessness spiral. When you've been struggling financially for a long time, your brain starts to learn that effort doesn't matter. You try to save and an emergency wipes it out. You work extra hours and the money disappears into bills. You make progress, and something sets you back. Over time, this creates learned helplessness. You start to believe that nothing you do will make a difference, that you're stuck no matter what, that the system is rigged, and effort is pointless. This belief becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe your actions don't matter, you stop taking action. You stop trying to improve your situation because trying feels futile. And then your situation really doesn't improve, which reinforces the belief. This is one of the deepest psychological traps of long-term financial stress. It's not just that you're struggling, it's that you've lost the belief that struggle can lead to change. And without that belief, escape becomes nearly impossible. Breaking learned helplessness requires proof that your actions matter. Small wins, visible progress, evidence that effort leads to results. This is why even tiny improvements in your financial situation can have outsized psychological impact. They restore your sense of agency. The social isolation effect. Financial stress doesn't just change how you think. It changes how you interact with other people. When you're struggling, you withdraw. You avoid social situations that cost money. You stop asking for help because you're embarrassed. You isolate yourself because being around others reminds you of what you don't have. This isolation cuts you off from one of the most important resources for financial improvement, your social network. The people who could offer advice, connections, opportunities, or support. The relationships that could open doors or provide information. Wealthy people understand that financial success is social. It happens through networks, relationships, mentorship, and collaboration. But survival mode makes you retreat inward. It makes you try to solve everything alone, and that makes everything harder. Fighting this instinct is difficult but crucial. You have to stay connected, even when it's uncomfortable. You have to ask for help, even when it feels humiliating. You have to maintain relationships even when you can't afford to participate in expensive activities, because isolation guarantees you stay stuck. The comparison trap. When you're in survival mode, seeing other people succeed financially is psychologically painful. It reminds you of what you don't have. It makes you feel inadequate, left behind, or unfairly treated. This triggers two destructive responses. First, envy and resentment, which drain your energy and make you bitter. Second, compensatory spending, where you try to keep up appearances or signal success you don't actually have. Both responses make your situation worse. Envy distracts you from your own path. Compensatory spending drains resources you need for actual progress. The antidote is radical acceptance of where you are and ruthless focus on your own trajectory. Other people's success or failure is irrelevant to your situation. The only comparison that matters is between where you are now and where you were before. Am I making progress? That's the only question worth asking. But survival mode makes this almost impossible. Your brain is wired to compare yourself to your peers because social status was historically tied to survival. Being at the bottom of the hierarchy meant less access to resources and mates. Your brain is still operating on that ancient logic, even though it no longer applies. Overriding this instinct requires conscious effort. You have to train yourself to ignore social comparison and focus on personal progress. Every time you catch yourself comparing, redirect your attention to your own next step. The false urgency of immediate needs survival mode makes everything feel urgent. The bill that's due, the purchase you need, the problem that's happening right now. Your brain interprets all of this as immediate threat, and immediate threats demand immediate action. This false urgency prevents you from distinguishing between what's actually urgent and what just feels urgent. You treat everything like an emergency, which means you're constantly in reactive mode. You never have space to plan, strategize, or work on long-term solutions. True financial stability requires separating real urgency from perceived urgency. Most things that feel urgent aren't actually urgent. Most problems have more time than your stressed brain thinks they do. And most immediate solutions create bigger problems later. Training yourself to pause, assess, and respond strategically instead of reacting emotionally is one of the most important skills for breaking out of survival mode. But it's also one of the hardest because your entire nervous system is screaming at you to act now. This is where having a plan becomes essential. When you have a clear financial plan, you don't have to make every decision in the moment. You already know what to do because you decided in advance when you weren't in crisis mode. The plan becomes your guide when your brain can't. Think clearly. The effort it takes to escape. Here's the hardest truth. Escaping survival mode takes energy and mental capacity that survival mode itself has taken away from you. You need clear thinking to make good financial decisions, but financial stress impairs your thinking. You need discipline and planning, but stress and exhaustion make discipline nearly impossible. This is why telling someone in financial crisis to just budget better or just save more is useless. It's not that they don't know they should. It's that their brain is operating in a mode that makes it incredibly difficult to do. Escape requires first creating enough breathing room to restore mental function. This might mean accepting help. It might mean making hard choices that reduce immediate stress even if they're not optimal long-term. It might mean focusing on mental health and stress reduction before trying to optimize finances. You can't think your way out of survival mode while you're still in it. You have to change your circumstances enough to shift your brain out of threat response. Only then can you start making the kind of clear, strategic decisions that build long-term stability. This is gradual. It's not one big change. It's a series of small reductions in stress and small increases in stability, each one making your brain a little more capable of the next step, the path forward. Understanding survival mode doesn't make it disappear, but it does give you something crucial: awareness. When you understand why your brain is responding the way it is, you can stop blaming yourself. You can stop thinking you're broken or stupid or lazy. You're not. You're human. Your brain is doing what it's supposed to do in response to threat. The problem is that the threat is chronic financial stress, and the survival responses that would help in a short-term emergency become destructive in a long-term situation. Breaking free means working with your brain, not against it. It means reducing stress where possible, creating systems that don't require willpower, building small buffers that restore your sense of safety, making decisions in advance so you're not deciding in crisis, asking for help, staying connected, focusing on your own progress. It means understanding that financial stability isn't just about money. It's about creating the psychological conditions that allow you to think clearly and act strategically. And that starts with getting out of survival mode. Are you still in survival mode? Or are you ready to recognize it and start the work of shifting out?